My name's James Marriott, and I'm one of several members of Platform who are here at this camp. It's a totally inspiring day. It's wonderful. This camp is just absolutely totally inspiring. I'm very excited to be here, and it's just uplifting. I've just done a workshop, and I feel incredible energy from that workshop, which is good. One of the essential things that we were trying to explore in that is that if we're going to reduce the carbon emissions that we put into the atmosphere in order to avoid going over 2 degrees of global warming, which as far as I'm concerned is absolutely fundamental if we're not going to boil the planet and hit very serious climate change, we need to reduce our CO2 emissions by 90% in the UK in the next 23 years, and we need to stabilise our emissions in the next 8 years. That's a huge task. There are 66 million people who pass through this runway, this airport here every day, every year, and we could say that those 66 million people are to blame to some extent for the climate change. But I think that and I was trying to explore this in the workshop, there are some people who are equally well to blame, and that's 6 or 7 people. The people who run BP and BP Oil and Air BP, and I was trying to explore how their activities fuel this airport, Heathrow. Because as far as I'm concerned, we need to reduce BP's CO2 emissions, just like the UK, by 90%. Globally, BP puts out twice the amount of CO2 as the entire citizenry of the UK. 62 million citizens of the UK, they put out 2.5% of the world's CO2 emissions. BP puts out 5% of the world's CO2 emissions. That's a huge contribution that this company is making to global climate change, and it needs to stop. It needs to be reduced from its current level by 90% in the next 23 years. They need to stabilise their emissions in the next 8 years. That's a massive change that this company is going to make. But it lies in the hands of a few powerful individuals. And our job, and the job of society generally, is to encourage those people, persuade those people, indeed cajole those people into changing the company, changing the amount of CO2 that they put into the atmosphere by 90%. Now that's a huge job that they've got to change, and we need to pressurize them and enable that to happen. And I believe that we need to take that power into our hands to push people to do that, push these companies to change. Because one of the key things is that power is the ability to ensure that other people bear the burden of change. Power is the ability to ensure that other people bear the burden of change. BP knows that this kind of change in relation to climate change is going to take place. They know that they need to go beyond petroleum. But as far as they're concerned, they don't want to do that very fast. But as far as we're concerned, we need to do that rapidly. Because if we don't do it fast enough, then the people who bear the burden of BP not changing are the people in Bangladesh, the people near the Arctic, who are actually bearing the burden of climate change. We need to pressurize BP and the other oil companies, but I was talking specifically about BP here, to make those changes, to reduce their CO2 emissions by 90% over the next 23 or so years. We need to make that change. We need them to make that change. We need to pressurize them to make that change. They need to take the burden of change. They need to make the change. Otherwise, other people are taking that burden of change. Other people are suffering. And by other people, we mean vast swathes of this planet in the coming years. Vast swathes of species on this planet in the coming years. We need to make that change. We need to force them to make that change. And that's why I'm part of the process here, and I'm totally happy to be here, and it's an inspiring place to be. Thank you. Was that any good?